Hey guys, so today I'm going to be going over a build that I plan to league start with in solo self-found hardcore this league for Ultimatum, and that is going to be a Reap Chieftain. Uh, why Chieftain, might you ask? Reap is a physical skill. Well, because we're going to be converting all our physical damage to fire damage. How are we going to do that? Not by using Nagamu. While that is probably a good choice, I will get into that, mainly because we're already converting 100% of our damage. But there's a couple other reasons too. Before I do that, though, the first reason I want to go over is why not Juggernaut? It's a physical skill. We can get a lot of damage out of Unyielding with our damage per endurance charges, and we can also get that down here in Discipline. Uh, Obviously, Juggernaut has a lot of really good survivability with the endurance charge generation, but if we plug in Ethereal Knives as our placeholder skill, since it's a very similar skill in properties, it's a spell, it's physical, and it's duration. There's not that many skills that synergize with it. We have Iron Will and Brutality, basically. Although there are newer skills that we have. I can actually close this now. There are newer skills. We can add Bloodthirst and stuff. Maybe if we wanted to run Petrified Blood, which I'm not a fan of running Petrified Blood. I will get into that. Obviously, we can use like Cruelty, Life Tap. Those are valid options, but I just found the amount of support gems that work for this setup are very limiting if we just use physical and we are a Marauder. And so I thought it better to maybe open up our ability to use other support gems. And since I play EQ Chieftain quite frequently, I usually my past few league starts have all been EQ Chieftains, so it's a part of the tree that I'm very comfortable with now. I thought, what would happen if I just converted all my physical damage to fire and used fire support gems to help with my damage? And turns out that was a pretty good idea. So yeah, starting out, this is going to be our part of the tree that we're headed through. We just start out here with the life nodes. Life is obviously going to be important since I play Soul Self-Found. We're not so much worried about damage. Obviously, if you were going to play in softcore, you could use other builds that don't pick up as many life nodes and just run with more damage nodes. And you could crank out a lot more damage out of this build. But since I do play Soul Self-Found Hardcore, that is why we have so much survivability here. And so this should all be Soul Self-Found viable. Obviously, Chieftain, we're going to have 100% free fire resist. So that pretty much solves all future resistance problems we're ever going to have. We're going to have a lot of endurance charge generations. Since we have Inexorable, we have armored endurance charges, and then we can pick up a few endurance charge nodes in our passive tree. If we want to do that. And so we'll pretty much always have endurance charges up, especially since I usually run Enduring Will as my war cry with this. And so that's going to be one of the skills that we're going to be using. But just running through here, pick up all these life nodes. That'll make you super tanky. Not necessarily so important for the early game, especially this build is probably going to have some issues clearing early content because you're just not going to have any damage nodes until you get up into this part of the tree, but you'll survive through anything, so I doubt that's going to be a problem for anybody running this, and these are going to be your only damage nodes as you get in the early game, and that really depends on whenever Marauder gets access to Reap. I don't know if they're going to start with it, if it's going to be picked up in the library, where you really have no way of telling. I don't think that's mentioned in the patch notes at all for this. So as far as when we get the Reap skill, I don't know. Just run something like Ground Slam or Sunder or something until you get to that part. It's not going to be that big of a difference. You'll still be clearing content, but maybe instead of clearing an act every 30 minutes, you're going to be clearing an act every 45 minutes. Still going to be very, very doable. But yeah, pick up all these life nodes, just continue moving up in the tree until you get into your damage zones and stuff. You will have a lot of passive resistances and stuff, especially from your endurance charges too. You're pretty much always going to be at max endurance charges. I think we get 5 out of this. I'm not sure. I didn't really count. But either way, you'll be fine. I know, let's see, yeah, you get maximum endurance charges out of this too. So whenever we use Enduring Cry, and then we also have the passive nodes, you pretty much should always be at 5 endurance charges, I think. So those are some extra resistances. And if we wanted to just plug that into the calculator, we can. Since I think we do get a little bit of extra damage from the endurance charges. So no extra damage, but you can see our resistances are all positive after Act 10, except for Chaos Resistance. So itemizing for this build is going to be very, very easy. Mainly, you're just going to want to look for fire damage spells and stuff in life. And then whatever resistances you can. I don't think anybody's going to have any issues, especially even in Soul Self-Found, capping their resistances, except for Chaos Resistance. But you should have enough life regen that any Chaos degen, you're going to be out healing anyway. So even without Vitality on here, we have 724 life regen. This is also without like any gear. I think the only item that I have equipped here that gives life is the Chernobog's Pillar, which I was just using for showing the damage purposes on gear. Since usually I don't have any trouble picking up a couple of Chernobog's Pillars in the end game. I know I am using a Doriani's Catalyst, which drops from Adziri. Probably most people aren't going to be picking up this in Soul Self-Found, but there's plenty of good wands and scepters that you can pick up in between that you can substitute for this. I just picked this up because it had good stats on it, and I didn't want to create my own. So that is the reason that is there. Up here, this is whenever you get into the closer to in-game areas, you'll pick up these nodes. These are pretty good damage nodes for you. And I should also probably go ahead and talk about our Avatar of Fire up here, since we are converting our damage. The reason that we don't take Nagamu is we're already converting 100% of our damage here, and so gaining extra physical damage every 10 seconds is nice for 4 seconds, but I personally prefer to have 100% uptime on my damage. I mean, it probably doesn't matter that much. You probably actually get more damage out of this. I'm not really quite sure how the interaction works, but it's only going to be a 40% uptime on that damage. And so I would rather go over here and get an extra 10% damage that I always get instead of whatever damage I get from here. Since we don't actually do any physical damage, I'm not sure if this applies before or after. I'm assuming it's before, and so this probably is pretty nutty and how much damage it gives you. But I don't like to wait around and I not do damage while I wait for it. So that's why we're over here. And then Ramako, obviously, assuming the damage over time component on Reap does convert to fire, the fire damage over time multiplier there should function on that. I'm not quite sure how that interacts. I've never tried to convert any types of damage to fire for that purpose, so it's kind of a new mechanic to me. I'm assuming there's no reason that it wouldn't work, so that 1463 base physical damage per second should get converted to fire. And it does get affected by the spell damage, so we get a little spell damage in the tree too, but I don't think there's any reason this doesn't convert to fire. So the fire damage over time multiplier, I'm assuming, will work for that. And so we should get a lot of value out of Ramako for that. So that's why we don't pick up Nagamu. I know I've had somebody come in my stream before and ask whenever I was playing EQ Chieftan why I don't want to have Nagamu. And that's because you get 40% conversion here. You get 50% conversion here, which is 90%, and that makes, at least in terms of the tooltip values, Nagamu weaker than Ramako in most builds. And also, that makes your fire damage and your rings and stuff because fire damage, you get more fire damage than you do physical damage in your jewelry. You can put fire damage in your jewelry instead of physical damage, and you scale that up, and that also adds a ton of damage to your build. Whereas if you convert, you can only use physical damage, and physical damage is lower values on jewelry. So since we're converting 90% of that, and then assuming we get this tower shield, which I'm pretty sure I should pick that up. I don't think I've ever had a recent league where I missed it. You get 25% conversion from this too, and you get a little bit of added extra spell damage here too. So that's always nice to pick up, and it has some pretty good life values and stuff on it too. The fire resistance we're not so worried about, since our fire resistance is already going to be nutty anyway. But I mean, who doesn't like being over resistance cap without any jewelry investment or anything into that? So shouldn't have any issues filling out our other resistances with the rest of the gear. So that makes itemization really easy, which is nice for solo self-found, and that's why I like doing that. But yeah, from this area, I mean, we get a ton of life, we get a ton of regen, and then we just go over here and get tons of damage. And that's the tree. And as far as what you're going to be running with this, for testing purposes here, I have added fire damage, combustion, efficacy, fire penetration, controlled destruction. You could probably swap a couple nodes on your tree, take controlled destruction out, maybe pick up elemental overload. It only costs 2 skill points. So if maybe you don't want to go all the way up here, you could pretty easily pick up elemental overload. That's probably a pretty good option. Actually, I'm looking at that now, and that may be pretty viable, but we'll see. I may or may not change up some things as we're going through. This is just kind of a proof of concept to show that you can convert physical damage to fire damage on Chieftan for the new skills, and you can be pretty successful with it. Our tooltip damage here is going to be quite a bit lower than what the actual damage of Reap will be, but there's no way to plug in Reap right now, so we can't actually see the real numbers. And yeah, I don't have any items equipped here either, so obviously whenever we start adding spell damage and stuff, fire damage and stuff, it's going to be going up quite a bit. Anything else I wanted to mention while I was doing this? I'm trying to think. I did record this actually once already, but it turns out my mic was not attached to OBS, so it didn't pick up any of that. Oh yeah, I was going to talk about these skills that you use with it. You could use, let's see. So it may be viable to pick up Petrified Blood here, and maybe use Herald of Ash. I don't think, wait, does Herald of Purity add, I guess Herald of Purity does add 9k damage. So if you added Herald of Purity, Herald of Ash, and then, let's see, Anger and Vitality. These are all pretty important skills that we can use. Obviously, you want Vitality for the life regen. Just having more life regen's OP. You don't even need to run a life flask with this. You'll want like 1 consecrated flask, and then you'll want like a chaos resistance flask, and pretty much any other flask that you can think of. I mean, honestly, life flasks probably aren't a bad option now, because since you don't really use mana, since you're going to be spending life for your skills, just having all life flask is probably pretty viable now. I'm thinking for the movement skill, shield charge, and the reason why shield charge over flame dash is for fortify, because now I think they fixed a bug where you could get fortify from other sources. Obviously now picking up fortify somewhere is gonna be pretty helpful. I mean, you're gonna be really tanky on this build, so you probably don't need fortify, but if you can have fortify, why not? You know, it's Fortify is a very nice thing to have, especially in Soul Self-Found. You probably don't need it if you're playing in Standard, but just having Fortify here would be really, really big. Other than that, if you don't want to use Fortify, then obviously you're going to be using Flame Dash, because Flame Dash just has so much synergy, and it will do a pretty decent amount of damage too. That's not why you pick up Flame Dash, but it does do damage, especially if you're building fire damage. So I don't know if we can actually check it out, but yeah, Flame Dash actually does a decent chunk of damage compared to the rest of our skills, but you don't need it. It's just a movement skill. I'm thinking I'll probably try out Shield Charge, or maybe even Leap Slam, because I think Leap Slam works with Scepters. So Leap Slam's probably a good choice too, just because somehow if you want to pick up Fortify so that you're even more tanky, either Shield Charge or Leap Slam will enable you to do that. And so all of these, and as far as the Petrified Blood mechanic goes, since these only reserve 25% and Vitality reserves a set amount, you could maybe slot a Herald and maybe Vitality into your health bar as reserved health and use Petrified Blood. And that could be a pretty good way of just maximizing your damage output, since you will take a little bit more damage with Petrified Blood. It's not quite 100% efficiency as far as reducing damage, and I am very worried about how Corrupted Blood is going to function this season, since GGG did come out and say that Corrupted Blood has been buffed with weaker mobs, where Corrupted Blood basically did no damage, and the stronger mobs where Corrupted Blood did a lot of damage, it's going to do less now. So I think degens this league, especially for people running Petrified Blood, might be killing a lot more people. So I'm very concerned about that in my build. I'm probably not going to run with that just to start, but we can definitely test it. But if we want to run all of these at the same time, this has a total 100% mana reservation for Anger, Herald of Ash, and Herald of Purity. So somewhere we're going to have to reserve life. And obviously we could probably just reserve life with Vitality, and then make everything else cost health to cast, and just have a 0 mana pool, and we'll probably be fine with that. So setup like that is probably going to be optimal. I'm not a huge fan of Corrupted Blood just because it doesn't make you less one-shottable. And especially with degens this league, we don't know how Corrupted Blood's going to be, but if Corrupted Blood's strong enough, I'm not really cool with having a smaller health pool just because you have less time to react to that degen. So, yeah. That is what we're looking at. I will be streaming me playing this build, at least assuming I don't die. And you can catch me at twitch.tv/xbod for the next few days. I will probably be going pretty hardcore on that. So probably will be doing a 24-hour stream, starting at the league start, or maybe a couple hours after, depending on if I get in queue or something, or don't wake up in time. Feel free to come by and see how it's progressing. If I die on it, I'll probably go back to EQ Chieftan, or I have a Wild Strike build here that I've been working on. I really like Wild Strike as a skill, so I could see this as something that I swap to, Wild Strike Raider. I've had some great success with that in the past, or if I just import one of my old builds. I think probably one of my safest options here is a Charge Dash Raider that I was working on. And Charge Dash is per stack, so I don't know if I can create the charges here. But yeah, This is the most successful build I had last season after I did a couple of meme builds and stuff. And the Charge Dash Raider actually ended up doing me very, very well. It was very, very good. But I did get some good gear here. I had a 6-link sword that obviously kind of carried me. I had a Worm Sign, which are really good gauntlets to get. And then I just kind of got really, really lucky on my gear. But here I was converting some lightning damage to cold damage too. And so I was freezing enemies while I was running around with Charge Dash. So I was super tanky. I had a lot of life and a lot of life leech. And it was really fun. I would absolutely do this build again. I know Charge Dash is a very odd skill to run with, but the only reason I didn't finish this off is because my network was really bad, but I've since fixed that. So that may be something that I roll to again. And let me know if you guys would like to see a more detailed build video for any of these builds. These are all stuff that I run pretty commonly. So yeah, until tomorrow, that's gonna be it for me. I will upload this tonight. Hopefully some people find this helpful.